Upon the death of Wellington, Queen Victoria proclaimed that he was the greatest man the country ever produced. He died on the 14th September 1852. An embalming must have taken place, for the funeral was long deferred. The body was removed from Walmer Castle on the 11th of November to Chelsea Hospital, that in its hall there might be the lying in state. I lived in Chelsea at the time, so that local interest was added to the excitement. I remember being shocked to learn that 5 persons were crushed to death at the gates of the hospital. Owing to the enormous crowd, described at the time as follows. The actual words were, "The multitude actually smoked like a heated haystack from the pressure and strain upon individuals." With the object of our seeing everything, my brother and I were entrusted to an uncle that he might take us to see the lying in state. The police had then taken precautions to prevent further fatalities, and their directions were that the intending sightseers should enter from the King's Road, Chelsea, the open gravel space in the centre of Royal Avenue, as it is now called, leading to Burton Court, and thence to the cupola of the hospital, the hall where the solemn spectacle took place being to the right. We were formed into groups of about 50 people each, at intervals of about 10 yards, these extending the whole quarter of a mile of the route. From time to time, as progress was made, all these groups in close formation were allowed to shuffle forward the distance to be gained. I do not know what time this penitential, purgatorial pilgrimage occupied, but the flow must have been fairly rapid, as on the last 3 days of the spectacle, 50,000, 60,000, and 63,000 respectively passed through the hall. I was not sorry that in a short time our uncle thought that our attaining our object in a reasonable time was hopeless, and therefore withdrew us from the feted group into which we had been shepherding. To view the funeral procession, seats had been secured in a shop in Fleet Street, where the law courts now stand, a few doors west of Temple Bar, which was decorated, as I thought, very beautifully. My parents seemed to have been affected by that feverish anxiety as to reaching the ceremonial in time. The result being that on the vital morning of the 18th of November, I was aroused from my bed by candlelight, as gas was not laid on until some years after. To reach Fleet Street, we adopted our usual means of locomotion to the city, by steamboat from the Cadogan Pier, disembarking at the Temple. Contrary to expectation, there was no crowd, so that we made the voyage in comfort. There is no doubt that in its impressive and elaborate pageantry, the funeral of the Duke of Wellington would vie with any which has taken place before or since. It was attended by royalty in the person of Prince Albert, and by distinguished persons, both English and foreign. Naturally, the impression which such spectacular splendour made upon my mind was passed away, but the appearance of the funeral car, so appropriately caparisoned, with a hero's hat and sword on the coffin, gave me great delight. It was drawn by 12 horses and weighed 12 tons. What necessity there was for so heavy an equipage, it is difficult to understand. The presence in the procession of 83 Chelsea pensioners, the number corresponding with the age and years of the Duke, pleased me much, as seeing them daily in the Chelsea streets, I looked upon them as old friends. My mother remarked upon their tired appearance, which was owing, no doubt, to their having walked from Chelsea. There being too, one may assume, as is customary in military diversions, hours of unnecessary standing about. The majority, if not all, may have beheld the Duke when commanding in India, the Peninsula, or at Waterloo. After the lamentable loss of life at the lying in state, the police were keen to avoid a similar calamity. As if eager to follow the procession, an enormous crowd appeared on the south side of St. Clement Danes Church. There was no embankment in those days, and possibly it was feared that as there was no outlet, the crowd would be congested at the bottleneck of Temple Bar. I remember that the police closed up across the road and belaboured the crowd with their truncheons, the result being that under the warmth of this reception, it soon melted away.